Hi guys, well after posting that video with regards to the Blackmore Strat, we have had a few questions about that what we might call saddle lock that I put under the bridge here, and I did with some of the other guitars. So with this video it's just going to help you to see whether it's a Blackmore Strat or any other Strat that tends to have a saddle, an E-saddle that moves away from the others and therefore causes your bottom E string to be too close to the side of the neck, and it slips off as you're playing. And as has been noted by some of the subscribers, this has put them off buying these guitars. So this saddle lock might just be the trick. But it also might benefit your any Strat or Tele type guitar that has that problem, where what the saddle will tend to do, it'll tend to move that way. So once this saddle lock is underneath it, you'll find that it just won't move anywhere. This is by no means the best design or the prettiest looking thing that you'll ever see, but it works for me. And I haven't had anyone say, what's that ugly piece of aluminium cladding off the front of his house that he's got that he's got under that saddle there. So have a look at the video and see how you go. Okay guys, well here's a brief demo of what I would do to make what we might call a saddle lock. Now the first thing we'd need to do is make sure that these screws are set correctly with regards to your intonation of each string, because that's going to end up giving you a particular pattern to where your saddle grub screws are. Now the first thing we do after we've set the intonation is grab a sheet of paper, maybe an A4 or something like that, and just sit it over the top of the screws in one corner, and then try and hold it steady, and then start to make an indentation into the paper from the tops of the grub screws. Just make sure you can feel each one and feel a bit of an indentation. There, it's important to keep the paper secure with your left hand, or whichever hand you're doing this with, and then we've got a bit of an idea of the pattern of those grub screws. So there's the pattern. You might not be able to see that now, however what we will do is put the guitar up for a second and then get a pencil and then start to shade along, just so we can see a bit clearer where these grub screws are. Not too heavy, but we should get a clearer representation of what's going on there. Okay, so now in the camcorder there you can see the pattern of the tops of the grub screws. Okay, so then you're going to need your aluminium. Now this actually is a piece of aluminium that I use to put a fly screen back in the window upstairs, because it's so high I can't get it from the outside. It's an old house. So I'm not going to cut this up, but I'll just use it for the sake of the demonstration, as we have plenty more of this stuff up in the rafters of the shed. Now this aluminium is 15 thou thick, or 0.38 of a millimetre. Alright, so that's the thickness that I'm using. You can use whatever thickness you like. So what we do, we've got the template nice and clearly outlined here. Then we'll just, now because this isn't quite wide enough this way, I'll just go long way so you get a bit of an idea. I would get it so that it meets up with a corner of the piece of aluminium I'm working on, sit it like that. Obviously this is over detail for a lot of people, but anyway, for those who are learning this sort of thing, it might be helpful. Okay, so we've got it there. Then, with a previously sharpened nail, I would go along, and in the middle of all those little grub screw head circles or hex circles, I just give that a light tap with a hammer and just go along each one, but make sure that the paper doesn't move. So as I go down, just tap each one with the hammer, and that would create an indent on the aluminium. And then what you would do is, just for the sake of safety, if you're using a sheet of aluminium, or if you get excited and start using stainless steel, the last thing you want to do is to try and hold that stainless steel down with one hand and drill with the other, because what will happen is, if it does get caught, then it'll do the spin around and you'll end up with a cut hand. So just a word of caution there. So the idea is to have a piece of wood to drill into if you don't want to drill into your bench, and then another piece of wood on top, which I don't have here, and just secure your piece. So you've got your indents marked in your aluminium now, because you've tapped them out, and that's quite easy to poke that into the aluminium with the sharpen the nail or whatever you want to use. So all you're going to need is a really fine drill bit, or just enough to get the contact point of the grub screw to contact the steel of the top part of the tremolo arrangement, the chromed section there. So obviously whack that into your drill, and then just gently go through and drill holes exactly as the template has set out on your aluminium there. So if you follow those instructions, you should end up with something that looks like that. So what you would do is, once you've got it all marked out there, you would cut along with tin snips, or if you haven't got that, maybe a hacksaw blade or something, and then just neaten the whole thing up with a file. You can even use a little bit of sandpaper, that'll do the same sort of thing. And so there's an old one that I've probably haven't used for maybe a year and a half off one of the guitars here. But you can see why you have to set your intonation first, then the grub screws will fall into those points. Okay, so the length that I have here of this piece, this finished piece, is 7 centimetres or 2 inches 3/4, and the width across is 8 millimetres or 5/16 of an inch. So that's about the size that you'd be looking at. And remember, it's only 15 thou thick, so it's 0.38 of a millimetre. And there's your saddle lock right there. So to insert the saddle lock setup, what you would do is just loosen all your strings. Remember that you have still a little bit of down pressure from these springs here, even when you take your strings off. I've never had one of these things fall out of a guitar while the strings are off, because there's a bit of pressure still holding these guys down. So loosen them off, and then just one at a time lift the saddle up, remembering which end's which, which you just whack it over the top again and you'll see the pattern. And then one at a time lift it up, and then as you get under, you can use a ruler or something like that, or individually, and even just slide them along, or just slide it along like that. And then as the strings are loose, you will be able to lift up the saddle individually and pop it under, and just make sure that it's locked under the end ones, the end saddles. Some of them might not make full contact. You can pull it out and enlarge the holes as big as you like, really, as long as those end ones are able to keep the whole lot of them snug. The other thing too is to point to keep in mind once your intonation's done is you want to, when you're doing your template, you want to make sure that they're all snug and as close together as possible. Otherwise, you'll only have a replication of what you're trying to, a permanent replication of what you're trying to eliminate. And that's with a saddle that's skating out to the side here and leaving your string way too close to the fretboard, falling off the side of the fretboard. Alright, so hopefully that's not too much information for what seems to be a ridiculously simple process that hopefully can arrest your problems with your saddle waltzing around all over the place. So let us know how you go with it and whether it helps any of your problems with that sort of issue.